asked him, like, is that title like what defines you? Like, you made it. He was like, no, because there have been a number of people before me who have had that champion title, and there will be a number after me. I'm not the only one. And he was talking about like what his next act would be. And he said, you know how sometimes you need to step back to jump farther? And he was like, I've been doing that my whole life. Basically, I'm not scared to bet on myself.
Health, fitness, mindset, nutrition. Live better and longer. I'm Saad Alam, and let's hone in.
I would say of all the people that you have interviewed or learned about, I'm not going to say who's your most favorite because that wouldn't be fair. I would say whose views and what were they specifically that fundamentally had the largest impact on your life personally, with the understanding that everyone has a different perspective and it would impact them differently.
Okay. So I used to be a person who would take everything very personally, and that was really bad in like personal relationships, because I would always assign malice where there was no malice. But like you said, like you fill in the story, the unknown in the story, with something horrifying instead of something positive. So I interviewed Robert Hogue, which most people may have never heard of. He did a TED Talk, and he wrote a memoir called Ugly. And the reason it's called Ugly is because he was born as a child with a massive tumor in the front of his face. On the it moved his eyes, it rearranged his nose. It was awful. So they had to do multiple surgeries on him as a newborn baby to try to like kind of bring his eyes closer, because they were on the sides of his head, to the point where his mom, in the interview, Robert was like, can I read you a journal entry from my mom's diary from when I was born? And I was like, oh my God, sure. And his mom literally wrote, this baby is so ugly. I do not want to take him home. You know, how could God do this to me? All this stuff, where your own mom doesn't want to take you home because you're too ugly. She left him at the hospital. They went home, and then the family actually took a vote with all his siblings of, should we bring the baby home? And his siblings said yes. So that's why they brought him home. She basically, he understands it now. He has completely no ill will towards his mom, but he was like, you know, imagine as a parent seeing that and being like, how hard is that going to make life for this child, for all his siblings, etc. So he grew up like being severely bullied, all this stuff. And he still finds so much beauty in life. And he's like, I've led a beautiful life. But the thing that he told me that goes back to what I said about taking things personally and completely reshaped how I see that, is he's like, you know, actually, when people don't ask me about the way that I look and the bumps and the scars and the whatever, that's actually a little more disappointing, because there's this like wall between me and the person I'm talking to. He's like, of course, there's judgment, you know, like some people will judge you based on whatever. But he's like, sometimes people ask questions because it's just curiosity. And he's like, sometimes curiosity is just curiosity. So when somebody asks you like, hey, what happened there? It's not that they're judging you, it's that they're genuinely curious. And he's like, I always take the opportunity when somebody makes a remark or asks a question to open the door and tell them more and share something about my life. So I since I talked to him, I've always thought about like, maybe sometimes people aren't asking questions out of like, ooh, what are they trying to get at or whatever. Maybe it's genuine curiosity. Kids do this a lot. They'll ask somebody like, hey, why does your face look like that? They don't mean it as like judgingly. They mean it genuinely because they're curious. So I think like from him, I learned looking at the world through a curiosity filter, because any lens that you attach, the way you see the world, that's how you're going to see the world. When I was watching a lot of reality TV shows, I saw the world through like Bachelor style, like, ooh, you know, is he doing this behind my back? Or why didn't she text me back? Is she mad at me? Like all this stuff. So the way that you see the world will affect what story you tell yourself. So if you look at it through a curiosity filter, I think you allow yourself to be more empathetic and also to be less divided in a world of divisiveness.
I feel like you also just validated my entire child and adulthood as well too. I ask questions because I'm just so goddamn curious, right? I would imagine that every time someone asks him about what happened to his face and he gets to tell the story,
Yes.
you are actually making the world a more beautiful place, and you are enriching someone's life and impacting them in a way that they probably have never been before. And that then allows that person to go tell another person about it. And the
Yes.
story lives on. And I actually think that's beautiful. All right. So that's one. I want one more.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. The other ones are also like, I really like stories like this just because it's like, it makes you realize what people have been through and to get to where they are today. Is Francis Ngannou, who's the MMA heavyweight champion of the world, or he was. He basically made it from Cameroon to Niger, from Niger to Nigeria, from Nigeria to Algeria, from Algeria to Morocco, and then from Morocco to Spain, in hopes of becoming like a boxer, a professional boxer. Even though, he didn't have any connections, he really, really took a really hard path to get there. And while crossing, as he was trying to cross as a refugee between Morocco and Spain, he was 16 times, authorities caught him in the water and put him back. They either put him in a Moroccan prison for whatever period of time, or dropped him in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And we're like, good luck. He made the journey every single time, kept coming back, kept iterating. And then he got asylum in Spain. And then he was homeless in Paris, living in a parking garage. And he started training at a boxing gym. He was like, all I need is a boxing gym. And then when people asked him, like, what was it like to be homeless in Paris? And he was like, honestly, if you saw where I came from and what I'd been through, that was like a 4-star, 5-star hotel. So anyway, so he ultimately made it to the US as an MMA fighter, not a boxer. But he says that when I asked him, like, is that title like what defines you? Like, you made it. He was like, no, because there have been a number of people before me who have had that champion title, and there will be a number after me. I'm not the only one. And he was talking about like what his next act would be. And he said, you know how sometimes you need to step back to jump farther? And he was like, I've been doing that my whole life. Basically, I'm not scared to bet on myself. He's like, I see so many talented people who are scared to bet on themselves, and they're scared to lose everything and start over. And he's like, I don't have that. I can start over and over and over and over because I know I have the skills that nobody can take away from me. Nobody can take away the resilience and that grit to make it. And then the other interesting thing that I learned from him was by accident. I told him that my family came to the US because we won a green card in the green card lottery. And he said, oh yeah, I used to play that in Cameroon all the time. And I was like, oh, look, like, you could have come to the US that way. And he was like, but I don't believe in luck in that way, because let's say I did win and people would be like, oh my God, you're so lucky you won the green card lottery. And I would come to the US, not in the same way that I did, but I would still come to the US, but maybe I would work as like a security guard or something, right? As an immigrant from Cameroon. But because of the path he took, he was able to come to the US as MMA heavyweight champion. So it's just like one lucky event, but it could totally alter the way that your future looks. So, to some, that may have been lucky, but actually it could have been unlucky for him in the long term. And the really ridiculously hard path he took actually proved to be the lucky thing.
To bring it back full circle, it's kind of like the conversation we were having about high school kids just choosing a dot, sprinting to it with all of their life and their belief and their soul. And then when you kind of get there, it doesn't have to be the thing, it's the skills you acquired. And it's the same thing that he's saying, right?
Right.
It's kind of
Yep.
like you can constantly redefine yourself. Is going back to the comment you made, identity is slippery and we are the sum of all of our stories. But more importantly, and this is something that you said before too, our story is never done. Like you can
Right.
redefine it over and over again. And it really is all the skills that it took you to get to where you are that define you more than anything.